Welcome to Bold Bawdy. I'm here with my co-hosts.
Lena D.
Hey, it's Maddie.
Yeah, we had the illest intro just now. We had to scrap that shit, so let's get it.
But intro yourself, man.
Oh, yeah.
I was going to say, who
My
are
name's
you?
Wesley.
Who are you? Who let you in here?
Why are you here?
Man, the bouncer let me in here.
Somebody needs to fire Mike.
He didn't even see what I had. I had sneakers and shorts and shit. Like,
He's letting in all sorts of riffraff.
Don't let him in.
Don't let him in.
Actually, we got to let him in because you got a interesting topic for us. Right?
Yes. I have an interesting topic. But before I get into the topic, just remind everybody, it's June. Primaries are coming up. So please register to vote in your primaries. You know, you want to see the people who most represents your views and opinions. So go out there, register to vote. You can always go out to your state website, your state DMV website, and register to vote there. Or you can look up,
Google it.
or you can Google your elections agency, and they can have forms for you to fill out and register that way. All right, so let's get it. So this episode is about all the craziness that has happened to black and brown people in America. I know that's a lot.
Where should we start?
Where should we unpack all this? But there's this one word that black and brown folks like to use a lot, and it's called being woke. Now, what is woke? Like, I know all you white folks are asking, like, woke. I hear woke all the time. I don't know what woke is. Woke.
It's not you.
Like, it's like I'm awake, so that means I'm woke. No,
wow.
That's not how it works.
That's not how that works.
Wow. That's a fail.
So, you know, woke means the process of staying awake. No, that's the Webster dictionary. We got the Urban Dictionary now. Maddie
don't come for Webster.
Maddie likes to use Webster. So I'm going to use Urban Dictionary. So what is the definition of the real word of woke and how we
I think there's
woke?
more. Wait, before you say that, though, it's the whole term. The whole phrase.
Stay woke.
The term.
Stay woke.
Stay woke.
Yes.
Stay awake. You can't sleep.
Oh, God.
Don't get into the sunken place.
No, please don't. Just tell us.
We'll tell you what it means. All right. To stay woke means to be kept informed of the daily shitstorm that's going around in times of turmoil and conflict, especially on occasions when the media is being heavily filtered. Now,
Facts.
What the hell does any of that mean? So, where is a good instance of this actually taking place?
There's so many.
There's so many, but we're going to get into that later. Anyway, what I like to talk about is basically America's sin, and the original sin is basically racism. Racism has existed since the concept of America, even as early as the 15 and 1600s when we had indentured servants and stuff, and that kind of evolved into slavery, and that evolved into segregation and separate but equal and Jim Crow and all that. So, and that includes like the KKK, police brutality, you know, disparities in employment or disparities in gainful employment. That's a good word I had to put in there, as well as, you know, as well as the divestment of black and brown communities.
I think a big one that you can't forget is mass incarceration.
Oh yeah, mass incarceration. Thanks, Clinton. So yeah, I know I'm name dropping this episode because they deserve it.
Not that you were coming at me. Like I thought it was a sincere thing until you said Clinton, and I was like, wait, I didn't. I see what you did there.
Like, no, Maddie, it's
no.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault.
I was like, why he coming? Oh, he's not coming for me.
No, I'm not coming for you. Why would I come for you about
I'm
this?
sorry.
You racist? So you didn't even answer. What?
There was like crickets. It's like, wait, hold up.
Hey, hold on. Wait a minute here.
So I didn't know how to tell you guys. I'm joking. No.
Oh, I thought I was like, was she racist again?
Yeah. Lena D was ready to kick me out. Like, you need to go now. Like racist against who?
I was like, wait, what? What didn't we know?
Everyone.
Like yeah.
I hate everyone.
So we're gonna pinpoint some stuff about all these different things and how they've affected us culturally in this society that we call America today, or I like to use a turn of phrase, Trump land. Because right now, Yakubians out here, they're really real out of the pocket right now with some of the stuff that they're pulling. So let's
feeling really bold.
They feel real bold. So let's get right into it. So let's start with the Jim Crow era.
So, for those of you, just a real quick recap for everyone who was sleeping during American history, or you went to most schools where they kind of glazed over this part of American history. Yeah. Where it's really not covered. Jim Crow came after slavery was quote unquote abolished. And this is when people were trying to become or dismantle segregation, and white people were not okay with that. The white people in power, we're not here to say all white people are bad, but y'all know some of y'all fucked up.
Yeah.
But the white people that were in power, and mostly former slave owners and the disenfranchised, felt that they still had to find some way to hold all of these quote unquote free black people back and to hold them down. Yeah. So this new set of laws came to be, and it was Jim Crow. So during the era of Jim Crow, again, this is post-slavery, but before the civil rights movement.
Yeah.
So this is a very long period of time.
It's a long-ass period of time.
It's a very long period of time when you realize, like, when slavery ended and when the civil rights movement started. So this is deeply embedded in a lot of people and how they think and how they view minorities, namely black people. Okay, go ahead. I just had to give that context.
Damn. Okay.
I'm just saying, not everybody paid attention in in U.S. history, or even AP U.S. history, because I was in AP.
Any history for that matter.
No, because it's repeating itself. But so let's get into it.
All right. Well, you know about the Jim Crow era, which happened right after the Civil War ended, but right before, I guess, what was the period of time? The construction? No, not the construction. I'm missing the words. But basically what they did was that they split the South in different districts to govern them more effectively, because what ended up happening was that slaves ended up staying with their masters, and they ended up turning it into Reconstruction. Reconstruction.
I was right. AP US history, baby.
Yeah.
Let's go.
I was like, it's construction, or I
said
couldn't.
It was Reconstruction.
The Reconstruction
this is why
area.
I got what was it, a 4? Yes, I got a 4.
4 out of 5.
Those AP classes.
Yes.
Tough, but yeah. So what ended up happening was that a lot of the slaves tried to get some gainful employment, but the skills that they had was basically, menial labor, menial tasks. So what they introduced was more of, when they found out that people were still kind of being slaves, they split them up into districts within the Reconstruction era. What ended up happening was that instead of this being like all the slaves are free, they get gainful employment, blah blah blah, ended up being more of like a sharecropper system where they would live on the same land as the masters, former masters, and they would get loaned a lump sum of money, and then they would have to work off that sum of money. But they found that money was so like the way that they blocked off the work, that if they were never going to be able to pay it back. So when the United States government found out, they kind of disabled the sharecropping system. But then what ended up also happening was that, groups were being formed like the KKK and the NRA, which started the whole lynchings and the terroristic threats of black people, the burning of crosses, that sort of stuff started happening. And then we go from that to being, sort of free and separate, but equal, but not necessarily equal. And then now we get into the whole civil rights era, where from now we're fighting from 1882 to 1968. We're seeing lynchings, we're seeing race riots, we're seeing all this stuff happen, where civil rights is on the forefront with the Montgomery bus protest and Rosa Parks and Malcolm X, vying for a new black nation where we're all dependent on each other and not dependent on the Yakubians for anything. So I know I'm saying Yakubians, but there's a reason why I'm saying it, because I'm not using Yakubians in the way that's like, oh, well, it's all white people, but all white people who are racist to me are Yakubians. So that's what I'm naming them. So I'm sorry to become aggressive like that, but that's what it is.
But I think to get deeper, so like the history behind this is very important. So the reason why this Jim Crow era came about is because, going back to Maddie's point, it's like staving off the inevitable.
Right.
So you've built a country for free on the backs of slaves.
Yeah.
Word.
And so think about the economic value that free labor brought to the United States.
Yep.
And it's actually estimated, I think, about 300 billion is what I've read somewhere.
Yep.
And so when all of a sudden that goes away, and then you're now having to pay supposedly an equal fare or an equal wage for the people that have to do the work that they were doing for free before, that's where really people started getting into this upheaval of, we can't let them progress too much.
Right.
Because now all of a sudden, the white people that used to be the slave owners don't have anywhere else to turn. And so the immediate reaction is, they're doing this to us. They're taking our freedoms away.
Right.
They're taking away our economic prosperity. And so then what happened during that time is, and why lynching is an important thing to talk about, is because all of a sudden it was like, well, we can't hold them down as slaves anymore. What if we just kill them off?
We got to get creative with our shit.
Right.
So that's why, and the thing is that lynching was a socially acceptable thing to do if you were deemed a criminal, or if you were deemed to do something that you weren't supposed to do, or if somebody just wanted to accuse you because you're black.
And
or if you're too prosperous.
Back then, literally anything was grounds to be considered a quote unquote criminal, or to have done something to deserve to be lynched. It literally could have been you were walking on the wrong side of the street. You could have been, you looked somebody dead in the face. Like, it was anything. And it was done indiscriminately. Didn't matter if you were a successful black person just minding their business, or if you were a poor black person who's just on his way to work. Yep. Like, anyone could get it at that point in time.
Yeah.
And like we said, it was just so socially acceptable that there were like parties around it. There were picnics. That's where picnics came from. Yeah. That's where it was. Like, that's how ingrained it was into society.
Yeah, the Mandingo fights. And think about the story of Emmett Till. Like, what a lot of people are not telling you.
Don't get me started on that shit.
Yeah, is that the woman who accused Emmett Till of looking at her crazy ended up saying on her deathbed that never happened.
Made it up.
She made it all up. Now, think about that. Think about how far that went.
She died when? In 2016, 17?
She died last year, I think.
So it was recent.
Yeah.
Like, think about that. This man died. Not a man. He was a child.
This
child died because this grown-ass woman was like, he whistled at me.
Yep.
And that was enough.
It was enough. It was like if you looked the wrong way, you were accused of rape. Like, most of these things, like, they were never tried in a court of law. It's like you were still not a person because of how they decided. Even if it went to
court, though, it wasn't a court of peers. It was a court of racist white people.
Yaku.
Right. Which makes it even worse because most of these, like, the other thing, too, is like they're between 1882 and 1968, like about 5,000 lynchings were recorded. But then the ones that were not recorded. So just think of the magnitude of how socially acceptable it was to do that. And then also to recognize that the reason why it was socially acceptable is because any of the efforts to pass through legislation that would make lynchings illegal was always shut down.
Yep.
So it was basically those same racist white people that were shooting it down because they wanted it to be something that was a part of society to keep black people down.
Yeah. I still think crack is an invention of the government to keep black people down in the 80s, but that's just me.
So
I'm a
let's move
conspiracy theorist.
forward
I
to
know,
that
sorry.
then, because that's pretty much our, well, it's a little bit after the next section, which would be during the civil rights movement, where we have the race riots,
Right.
where essentially minorities was just like, you know what, I'm tired of your shit.
Yeah.
Enough is enough. Like, we're contributing. We deserve to have, like, fuck your separate but equal. I told y'all that I wasn't the good conservative. I apologize. I'm trying to work on my
I literally think
cursing.
about half the inventions that we have now were invented by black people.
Were invented by African Americans.
Even surgery, heart surgery, black person. They
Like-
credited a white man for that, but that was Dr. Vivian that did that. Let's stop.
Traffic lights.
Traffic lights.
Black people.
Yeah, black
Super
folk.
soaker.
Super
Black people.
The concept of vocational school, where you go to BOCES and shit. That is a black person that invented that. Benjamin something. I cannot understand for the life of me why people just think that black people just don't contribute anything to society.
Because people
We literally
wanna-
run culture. Now.
It's always swept under the rug. And so then the thing, like when we talk about civil rights and the race riots were instigated by white people that were salty because they didn't have jobs. So how familiar does that sound?
And that was the key to the Jim Crow era being successful. It was pitting poor white people
Against poor black people.
Poor black people. And making these poor white people who had no problem with black people before feel that the reason that they were in the situation they were in, and I hope all of this sounds familiar, but the reason that they were in the situation that they were in was because these black people were there taking away their opportunities. Does it sound familiar? Does it?
Sounds very
Does
familiar.
it? No? Oh,
Has
okay.
this happened before? I thought it just
it's happening now? No way.
Wait, in 2016, because I thought this was like in
This was in the
1800s,
1800s.
early 1900s.
Nah.
But we're in 2017.
18. Girl, it's 2018.
I mean, it just sounds like it's the same story, but I was getting
She's like, we
confused.
can't be in 2018 because it's some fuckery.
Like, this has happened with a bunch of the groups of people. This has happened with black folks. This is when
Italians.
this is Italians and the Irish
Irish.
came over. You know, this is what happened to them. They would be called dirty guineas and stuff. And I don't like using racial slurs like that, but look, let's call
It
a
is
spade a
what it
spade.
is.
That's what it is. That's what it was. You know, they were called all kinds of names. Then the Jewish folks came in. I remember Chris Rock telling a story about like how when he was doing the paper run with his dad, they would rank the deliveries based on their race. You know, at first it was the whites, then it was the Italians, then it was the blacks, and then it was the Jews. And I was just like, shit,
crazy.
That's crazy. That sounds crazy. But
Now, of course, as minorities, we tend to be more understanding and open-minded because it's like we have suffered these same discriminations. We have suffered these same wrongs. So I guess the reason why we wanted to go back and touch on this history is to understand how we got to where we are now.
And one more thing that I just want, before we get to where we are now,
Mhm.
most of the race riots, the police actually were involved in instigating violence against black communities. So they were
that doesn't sound familiar.
they were a part of the force that was like, and the other thing too that we haven't mentioned about the riots is that they took part in black communities. It's not like the white people said, hey, like, let's fight in our neighborhood, like Short Hills, New Jersey, or wherever we would have been. But like this took place in black communities.
We're going to travel to where they at to start fucking with them and then say that they're in the wrong. What are you doing on my block?
And then even though they were going into black communities, the police would side with the white people who were instigating most of the riots.
Yep.
So just wanted to say that before we get to where we are today.
basically,
So yeah. Oh, and we did miss where we essentially, I guess that is where we are now, into the system of mass incarceration. So we went from slavery to Jim Crow to the race riots, civil rights movement, and once we started to see some real progress is when, as Wesley said, the government introduced crack.
Oh, you want me to say? I believe that the government
There's
introduced
documentaries
crack
about it.
into the black communities throughout the United States of America to destabilize the communities. Because when Malcolm X was coming through, he's just like, I just want to build a black nation, and we should be dependent on ourselves. A lot of people in the 70s took that to heart. They started making their own stuff again. They started doing
Black
all
Panthers.
those black, and then all of a sudden, this fucking demon knows that crack hits the community all throughout in the United States or whatever, and all of a sudden, our urban centers are just decimated by it, like to a point where like we still suffer. This is now black and brown people still suffer from the same crazy crime laws that we did in the 90s as we do today. Like a lot of people get incarcerated for menial drug offenses. For what? Doesn't make sense.
So that introduction of crack into black communities led to violence. It led to a lot of violence, which we can't deny. Like that was real. Like there really was an issue. Mm-hmm. It was an epidemic. But unlike how the opioid epidemic is being dealt with now, at that point, I took it there.
I'm rolling my eyes about that.
So the difference is at that point in time, it became a war on crime.
A war on crime.
And the war on crime ended up with mass incarceration. There were tougher laws. There were pretty much any petty offense now, you would be charged with essentially life in prison.
Right.
And then you had 3 strikes. You had all of those 3 strikes laws. It was ridiculous. And this war on crime, unfortunately, was started by a Democrat.
I honestly say I can only name, out of all my friends, I can only name maybe like a handful of people that have tried some hardcore drugs. Like a lot of things, it's just, yo, man, I smoke a lot of weed. That's it. I'm good. I don't need anything else. My vice is weed and drinking. Like I'm good with everything else. I'm fine with. Like now it's like opioids and speed and not speed, but opioids and all that stuff. I'm just like, why should I now give one red penny to any of these relief efforts when we literally had something that happened 30 years ago that decimated a whole lot of communities, and now I have to put my money into that? But now I have to worry about Fall River, Massachusetts. Fuck out of here, man. Okay, I'm good. I named Fall River for a reason too, because that's a big opioid. They got a big opioid problem out there.
Yeah.
So, and that's predominantly a white community. So,
well, it's all about how it's positioned, right? So,
because white is right, apparently, according to everybody's eyes.
It's like if you can pin something on a minority community, it's inherently wrong. Absolutely. And so, again, fitting into that box of like, oh, well, it's black communities, brown communities, the poor communities that are black and brown that are dealing with this issue, like, it's gonna destroy like our society. And like it, like that's what the whole premise of kind of like Make America Great Again is, the fact that like,
yo, don't say that.
No, but that's what the premise of it is. And so like we got to be real and talk about like all of the stuff that we are saying is like, you know, before us, like this stuff happened, but literally history is repeating itself.
Yeah. So we just wanted to give a background on essentially why you even have to say stay woke,
right? Because
clearly this isn't something new. Mm-mm. This isn't something that just popped up out of nowhere.
Yeah, and
this is centuries in the making,
right? And I like to say something else before we get into it. What I like to say is this: like when Donald Trump puts his policies into place, where it's the tax laws and all that stuff, I had somebody that me and Lee and D know. I was just like, look, honestly, in the tax bracket that I'm in, I ain't worried about Donald Trump's tax laws because they help me. I didn't vote for him, but them shits helped me the most out of everybody because I'm part of the people that he's trying to help. It's not going to help you all that much.
You got money.
Yeah, it's not going to help you all that much. Let's say this. Like, if you make between $85,000 and $200,000, that tax law is going to help you. Honestly, it really does. It puts you and above. It puts you in a whole different place. You see extra money in your check that you haven't seen before. Life is good. That helps me. The people who don't make as much as I do, that's not helping you. So
the thing is, though, but like,
I guess that's more so for the Trump supporters who
Trump supporters who think
poor
that
Trump supporters.
who thought that
everything
making
that he was
America
was going
great again
to
would have
benefit
meant
them.
that whatever it meant, not realizing that a
In the
lot of
long
these
run, it's
a
gonna
lot
hurt
of
them.
the people who we're trying to market to, these are urban socialites, black or white, tend to make a little bit more money, tend to have a good standard of living, and it helps them a little bit more than it would help you, the poor white man or the poor black person who decided rural America who decided that Trump was like that person for them, that he was gonna go over there and take over Washington D.C. Like, no, that's not. I'm telling you, that's not happening.
That accent just made me really uncomfortable.
I was like, where did that come
Like, he
from?
pulled that out of the depths of his soul.
Yeah,
Like,
I hear the accent all the time. So it's like,
but no, again, so we wanted to give you that context of how we got to where we are now. And where we are now is where it seems like we've forgotten about that history. We've forgotten about, because we're in this era or this space of prosperity.
mm-hmm.
People are more well off now than they have been in a very long time. Like, we can't deny that. As a society, we are better off in terms of finances. Like, financially, we're doing better overall. So it's easy to forget and to ignore everything else that's going on. But the whole point of staying woke is to remember and to recognize and to identify everything that's happening, quote unquote, in the background.
Right.
So all of these issues. And one of the things that helps us to stay woke is social media. It's the rise of social media and how social media is being used now.
Right.
And we're seeing more activists using it. And you're seeing just the rise of social media activism, where it's just like, yo, did y'all know about this? And I can share it so much quicker.
Right.
I can disseminate this information so much quicker. And the hope is that we would stay woke and stay aware of what's going on.
Right.
During the civil rights movement, if something happened, if somebody was attacked by the police,
That's word of mouth.
right? It was word of mouth. I had to get to a phone. If I didn't have a phone in my house, I would have to go to the neighbor's house or go to somewhere public that had a phone and call up the local NAACP office. And they would have to disseminate that information to people. And then it would be a longer process to get people up in arms.
Right.
But
right?
it was still a system. So there was
Exactly.
still something there
Right.
that fueled activism behind it.
Absolutely.
And
now it's
But it was
not
on
easier.
a local level.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, so it's just like, I can only reach the people that are within this 30-mile radius.
Right.
Now with social media, though,
You can hit everybody.
I know something that happened over in Seattle.
Yep.
Somebody just got shot by the police in Seattle. As soon as I open Instagram, as soon as I open Twitter,
You see it.
now I know.
Like, this is the thing. Like, a lot of Yakubians like to say that America got less racist because we had a black president. No. Racism was still there.
Foolishness.
Now racism is being taped for all the world to consume. How crazy and you think that you being subtle is just going to help you out. People like to pull that phone out real quick. So if you want to be a hashtag today, go right ahead. You can be that hashtag. Go right ahead. Like the dude in New York, right here.
Oh, yeah.
Right here in our neighborhood where we live at. Dude ends up at the lunch counter. The lawyer was just like, oh, yeah, you guys shouldn't be speaking Spanish and blah, blah, blah in here because English is the primary language. This is the only country that I've ever been in, ever, where, like, we celebrate only speaking one language.
It's the worst.
It's not we.
Not
Chill.
But I
It's
have
the Yakubians.
No. But I have to say we, because we engage in this kind of craziness too. We engage in it. We like us
We
as
enable?
a whole.
Okay.
We enable
I'll allow
that
you to
shit.
say enable.
We enable it.
I don't know about engaging.
I know engage it, but we enable some of these Yakubians to say the same thing that they feel entitled to say. Like, you come up to people and say they're fake Jew, and he got
reckless.
He got
And
reckless, and
it definitely ties to social media.
Yeah.
Because I follow Sean King on Instagram, and I saw that post, and I was like, this is crazy. And he followed up after posting that. He was just like, I need y'all to help me figure out who this is. And within hours,
my man said he could speak Spanish.
he was just like,
in his post.
Not only do I have his name, I can tell you where he worked. I can tell you where his office is. Here's the website. Hit him up on Yelp. Like,
he had all these pictures.
You guys need to see that Yelp page.
This is the other partner. Like, they took him down from the website. Like, all of this stuff happened within hours.
They kicked him out of the place he was doing business at because the place did not want to, like, They wanted no association with it. Like, when you open yourself up to the court of public opinion, I'm telling you, man, you lose every time. The internet is always going to be one.
The internet is undefeated.
And you are going to be zero all the time.
People are always going to know.
All the time.
And of course, it is scary in those instances where somebody is identified incorrectly, because that happened a few times.
That's happened a few times.
But
for the majority,
overall,
it works.
It's a 90% hit rate out there on the internet.
It is very effective in terms of getting people informed and keeping them informed.
That Charleston March where people were marching and Vice was filming it, people were just getting picked off. Oh, he works at this place. Oh, he's the manager at fucking Carl's Jr. Or he's the person that works at Amazon.
He washed my car yesterday morning.
Yep.
Like, it was all sorts of stuff.
All sorts of people getting fired.
Like, we have to take this platform and use it to the best of our ability.
It doesn't help. Like, I'll add this. It doesn't help when you got the clown in charge, like the clown in chief, and his Keebler elf buddy over here talking about, oh, Dominicans ain't shit, or Salvadorians and Haitians are from shithole countries. Like, that doesn't help.
Or that all Haitians have AIDS.
Or all Haitians have AIDS. Like, it just emboldens people to do stuff like that. And I always say this, like, there are times where I'm just like, man, if someone came up to me and they said some shit like that, I don't even know how I react. I just punch them in the face. Like, I'll lose my job. I'll lose my job on the spot. And I was like, nah, I can't do that. I can't give that person satisfaction. But what am I supposed to do? I can't give them that power, but what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to be embarrassed for all the internet to see out there? Because, I got my image too out there that I want to keep under wraps or keep out there as a public profile for myself.
But
I don't want to be that guy. That's the hashtag too. Like, oh, Wesley's a bitch. And then they put it out there and it's out there for the whole world to see. And life is all horrible. Because I got my white folks saying, oh, he's a bitch. And I got the black folks saying, yo, why didn't you punch him in the face? Because I know there's a lot of black people like, yo, if I was there, I would have punched him in the face. I'd have gave him that work. I'd have threw the hands up.
But just like what you said, it was around, like, I don't want to be that person that just acts how you're expected to act because you're a person of color.
That's hard,
So, like, you have to take the wokeness that we're talking about and educate other people about it, around it. And, like, you can be gangster with it, but you can use your words to be gangster.
That's true.
And so, that's kind of coming back to, like, social media and how to use social media. But with everything that you've just mentioned that's been put out on social media, that's gone viral, that people are seeing, people are being called out, there is, like, this notion that, overt racism is a thing of the past. So going back to the history that we were talking about around lynchings and the race riots, that in itself was like overt racism. And it was
you
done.
Don't think this is not overt racism too?
Give me a second. I let you talk. So the whole notion of
Kanye.
that was overt racism at the time because it was socially acceptable. And so then there came a period of time where mass incarceration made it socially acceptable in a different way, but you had to be in the wrong place at the wrong time to be impacted by that.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden, everybody else that isn't engaging in those particular activities is sort of like, kind of just letting things go by because nobody's lynching anybody anymore in the 80s. Actually, I think the last one happened in 1981. But then
not chill. There was a chick that was lynched recently. There were lynchings that happened very recently in Georgia. I want to say it was last month.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I didn't know about that. But it's not as socially acceptable as it was back then.
Yeah.
But between the 80s and the 90s, which is like this period in which we've grown up,
mm-hmm.
white people have had the luxury to say, overt racism is a thing of a past.
We're beyond that.
But we're like, it doesn't exist. It's all in your mind. And it's more about covert racism. So for decades, we have had these things brewing in middle America. We've had things brewing sometimes right in our backyard. But it's now that Trump has made it socially acceptable, is that all of a sudden, oh my God, where did this wave come from? It was always there. It's the matter of making it acceptable that has made people feel emboldened to do whatever it is that they want to do. And it started immediately, like the day after he was declared president.
Not even. I would say it happened as soon as he announced his run for presidency.
Oh yeah, because that black dude got beat up by that white dude, and that black dude that got beat up by that white dude, like he went up in court and shook his hand and was like, I was like, Kiki, you went nobody. Like you literally tried to punch me in the face at a rally because I had a problem with what that man said. Come on, man, I'm done with
that. Like the being emboldened by his statement started immediately. Like. That much I will definitely attest to, because he came out swinging, talking about Mexicans are racist and they're rapists and they're rapists and they're
some of them are good, but they're all
like
pretty
criminals.
Oh yeah, I do remember him saying that.
Like that was right out the gate. He slid down the escalator. It was just like, "Ayo, Mexicanos, here's what I think of you." Like, there was no leading up to that.
I just, and one thing, and forgive me if I'm wrong for saying this, and maybe I am wrong, but I feel like there are some Latino and Latina brothers and sisters who don't see it as serious, who don't take it as serious. I have seen, like, they're just like, he's president and he really can't do shit, so.
I mean, that's in all groups, though.
Yeah, but it's
just like there was that outrage around.
It's not just us guys; it's you too.
It was. I
think that's
a Latino company that put in a bid to build the wall.
Ugh.
There was a construction company,
and
they got crazy backlash, but they're just like, I'm doing my job.
No,
like, what's the problem?
No,
you're always going to have that, even within the black community. No matter what community you have, you're always going to have the sympathizers.
Oh, you mean like
for
Paris
the
on
oppressors?
CNN?
Like, that's always going to happen. That's nothing new, and I don't think that's anything that's going to go away. So when we say stay woke, it's to the people that actually want to be aware of what's going on and are willing to take action in some way.
Yeah.
So we do want to touch on just a few of the things that we want our listeners to stay aware of, and to not let all of the bullshit, there's no other way to say it, like, don't let all of the bullshit just make all of these issues get swept under the rug. And I'd say a big one right now is immigration and what's happening around ICE and how ICE is handling the unchecked power that they essentially have at this point in time. Like, you have, I think it was last month where 2 women were detained by ICE because they were speaking Spanish. Literally, they spoke Spanish, and a border patrol officer detained them because he said that it was uncommon to hear Spanish in that area. They were Americans.
That's ridiculous.
They were 2 American women speaking. Like, that's the kind of craziness that's happening right now. You have, I believe she was Guatemalan, the Guatemalan immigrant that came through, and she was shot and killed by ICE.
That smells like a lawsuit. I smell greenbacks right there.
Ridiculous.
Literally.
And that's not to talk about the kids. Have you guys heard about the kids that are being detained at the border? And so I think
taken from their parents.
And they're taken from their parents. And then the other story that's out there is that, oh, well, we're not taking kids from their parents. They're coming here by themselves.
Houseway.
And I'm just like,
well, I have read that a few times where parents are just like, because they believe that the kids are going to be accepted more so than them, they'll send the kids, but it's not all of them. It's not like a whole river of children coming through. Like,
well, I'm saying it's like 1,500 children. So those 1,500 children that have been taken.
Oh, the ones that went missing.
Have been misplaced. I don't know how you misplace.
unaccounted for, I think, is how they changed it up. And I found it funny because the reasoning that the explanation was they were put with families, some of whom may also be undocumented, and so they don't want to respond to the request for follow-up. And it's just like, but bruh, if the issue is undocumented immigrants, why are you putting these kids with more undocumented immigrants?
And I don't mean to sound...
And then, what?
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
None of it makes sense.
And I don't mean to put it in like dollars and cents mode. So I'd like people to like really think about this, right? You get a ticket, right? From you, if you're driving, I'm pretty sure anyone who's driven before has gotten a ticket in one form or another. So I've gotten a ticket for moving violations. Usually they tell me to show up to court 2 to 3 months later when I got the ticket. Think about how big the backlog is for all the immigration court stuff. Think about how huge that is. Some people don't see the light of day in a courtroom
for
years.
I want to say John Oliver did a piece
think
on
about that. And that was during the Obama era. So
now,
and Obama was pretty bad about immigration. So I have a lot of gripes about Obama. I have a lot of praise and I have a lot of gripes about him. And you could take the good with the bad. But one of my gripes about Obama was the immigration stuff. And he was pretty bad about that. And that backlog was huge already. Now Trump is taking that backlog and he's tripled it. So think about when you're going to see an actual judge to adjudicate your...
But even beyond that, I think, again, y'all could go and check out if you have HBO. If not, watch it with somebody that does have HBO Go or whatever.
Let's get that password.
Or do that 1 month trial. Because I'm not trying to get in trouble with HBO talking about you told people to get our shit illegally. It's also on YouTube.
You should just watch it with a person.
Yes, watch it with somebody that has
have
it
a
already.
watch party.
That's already paying for it. But either way, there was this episode where he touched on immigration court, and he talked about how these cases are seen and decided on within seconds. It's not minutes, not hours, and people are going in unrepresented with no kind of legal representation, including children. So you have like 4-year-olds going into immigration court with no kind of legal representation.
And you're supposed to have legal representation even if you are undocumented. If you're not a citizen of the United States, you cannot go into a court unrepresented unless you sign something saying that you want to represent yourself, and that is almost highly irregular because they would make everybody sign, and I doubt that happens.
Which is essentially what's happening.
Which makes it unconstitutional to even adjudicate a trial like that.
So that's why we're saying immigration is definitely one of the things that we have to stay woke about, because there is just so much going on. And of course, they're making it seem like this is a South American Latina issue, but they're not the only immigrants.
No.
Let's not forget that.
Let's forget that the Keebler elf known as motherfucking whatever his name, Jeff Sessions, hates Dominicans. So for all the Dominican people who listen out there, look up Jeff Sessions, Dominican Republic, and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about.
Okay, but I'm just saying, like, it's not limited to just...
It's not just about...
because
it's my people's too.
It's
my people's too.
You're going to have people from everywhere that are affected by this. But just like what they did with Jim Crow, just like what they did with slavery, it's to highlight it and make it seem like it's them against us. So it's not our issue, which is why we're saying it's something that we want to keep at the forefront. We want people to stay woke about, because this affects everyone. It's not just people that don't look like me. Like,
that's why I respect the show. What's his name? Van Jones, where he'll bring poor black folk and poor white folk together and let them talk. Let them see like how similar they really are. There are no differences between the two except the color of your skin and maybe how you raise your kids. Maybe. There's no real differences, huh?
Because we beat our children.
Yeah.
But anyway,
maybe how you raise them.
Maybe how
discipline.
That was one
the discipline part. We do corporal discipline.
You're
grounded. For
Go to
3
the
weeks,
corner.
no internet. Oh, fuck you, mom. I don't have the internet.
All right. So you're going through something right now. Oh, wait. So we wanted to touch on immigration. And the next one, we're going to go through these really quickly because I know you guys got to go to work. Your commute is almost over. Your boss is wondering why the fuck
Why
you're
you
looking at
still
them crazy. Like, because this is some type of shit that'll make you angry. Like,
You're like, oh, fuck. You reminded
the
me
man.
that this happened?
like, we're sorry.
No, this is this has been white ladies. Like, this has not been. I haven't seen a white man call the cops on a black man doing his job or having a fucking barbecue or going to Starbucks. Like, it ain't nothing like that. It's just white lady. I don't know what it is about black people just doing black people things.
This
like,
not even black people thing. Going to Starbucks?
Going to Starbucks.
Are you kidding me?
That is not a black people
or,
thing.
not.
You know, I've gone to college before and I'm in the common room and sometimes, just sometimes, my eyes tend to, wander a little south towards my mouth. I'm about to fall asleep.
What?
I'm like, oh no, I wasn't sleeping. I was trying to suffocate a fly in my eye. That kind of shit. The shit that happened at Yale with the woman.
What are you talking about?
What is that?
The shit that happened
No,
at
I'm
Yale.
just talking about the south to the mouth. Suffocate a fly.
As if
I've
I'm
never
closing my
heard.
eyes.
I've never heard those.
You've never
those
heard like,
phrases
oh,
before.
I
No.
wasn't sleeping. I was trying to suffocate a fly in my eye.
I've literally
What?
never
I've
heard
never
that
heard
before.
that.
You've never heard
You're
that?
making that up.
No,
You
I'm
are
not
making
making that
that
up.
up.
I am not making that up.
Okay,
did
so
that
to
come
all of our
from?
listeners, if
So
you
when
have
the
heard
teacher
this
comes
shit
up to you and
before,
he's like, oh, I need you to solve the problem. You've been sleeping, have you? Oh, no. I wasn't sleeping. A fly went into my eye and I was just trying to suffocate it.
That's mad intricate.
I did not.
Again.
I didn't make it
so
up.
to our listeners, if you've ever heard this shit, let us know because I really feel like he's making
No,
this up
I am
right now.
not making that up. I'm
Either
not
way,
making,
so
that's mad intricate, but I did not.
I'm pretty
make that
sure at
up.
this point you figured out what Wesley is talking about. We're talking about how pretty much once again the police are used
Sleeping
to
while black.
terrorize
Barbecue while black.
not just white
Coffee
people
while
though.
black.
Again, it's
But it's
minorities.
all-
Real
I'm
estate
going to-
while black.
I'm going to
It's all people of color, though.
yes,
Yeah.
it's
Because-
all minorities because you also had the two Native American boys who had the cops
the
called
college,
on them
yeah, about the
because
college,
a
the
woman
tour.
felt quote unquote uncomfortable and like they didn't belong as part of a college tour. They were literally walking around, and because they weren't answering her questions when she pressed them, I'm sorry, but if somebody comes up to me pressing me for answers and I'm shy, I'm probably not going to be like,
Or like,
well,
I
hi,
don't-
Janice.
I don't know you. Like, why do I have to speak to
Look,
you?
all I'm saying is this: if you want a barbecue rib, though, just come up and ask. I want a rib. That's it.
My biggest issue
And
with
nobody
all of
wants
that,
your pale ass potato salad, fucking Karen. Shit.
My issue with it is how they quickly turn victim when the police actually do show up.
Oh yeah.
But that
There
was
was
classic.
another
the way that
video
was, like, handled.
That surfaced where this woman was following this couple. It was a couple and some friends or family that were walking around Berkeley, California, and she was following them around, literally telling them to get out of Berkeley. And she was like walking up on them like mad close to the point that the woman was just like, I need you to back away.
That's aggressive.
And she refused. But then once the cops showed up, now it was the black people who called the cops. But when the cops showed up, she was just like, this mob of people was trying to assault me.
Oh, no.
So this is what's happening. It's not just that the cops are being called on minorities for no reason. It's to turn around and making themselves the victims of some sort of perceived crime. And my skin is not a crime.
No.
It's not an act of aggression
No.
or violence towards anybody.
So
I felt
I have another example to that point. So I was recently in Boston, and we used to live in Boston, but I haven't visited Boston in almost like 2 years. And there's a particular area of Boston.
Did you go to Sam Adams?
I did not this time, but I've gone before and it was amazing. But the seaport in Boston has really gotten overdeveloped. There's a lot of restaurants, lots of buildings that are being built up, like residential buildings. It looks really nice, completely different from what I remember it looking like before. But then you start to look at the advertising as how they're trying to attract people to come live in the seaport. And it's a family of Yakubians, white people with their little dog, this and that. And like, that's what you see. Like, you belong here, but it's all white faces. And so then, one of the friends that I have in Boston has a friend of the family that owns a restaurant that is primarily based in Watertown. And they decided to then open up a secondary location in the Seaport because they saw that there was all of this investment going into that area. They thought that they would get new clientele or have people go there. And like when you're going to the Seaport, there's actually like a Latino-owned establishment that you can go and party, or you can go and have your brunch, whatever it is. And I must remind you that in Boston, boozy brunches, like unlimited boozy brunches, are not even legal.
They're not legal, no.
So when you go there,
that's why I didn't live in Boston.
No, because Boston's a drinking town, and when they did introduce that brunch kind of thing, people got they got wild crazy. And they were like, "Nah, this is a big problem. Like, you need to stop."
That's why I'm never leaving New
our
York.
first day we came into Boston. Actually, we were like, "Oh, this is a margarita place." You remember the margarita spot that we used to live? That was like right downstairs.
Right below, yeah.
Yeah. So we went there. Our first day, we're like, "Oh man, we're hungry. We want something to eat." Margaritaville's right there. Shit, let's go. They're like, and we were like, "Wait, but it's like 3 PM on a Saturday. Usually, that's like prime time happy hour type shit, like trying to get everybody ready."
Not in Boston.
He was just like, "Yo, y'all from New York, aren't you?" We're like, "Yeah."
Yeah,
They're
like, what's going on?
They're like, "Nah, you can't do that." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
So I will say that. So whenever you're going to an establishment in Boston, regardless of where it is, it's pay per drink, or you're getting whatever you're getting. Like nobody's getting wasted.
Okay.
Is basically what I'm trying to say.
Right.
So this establishment, they ended up hosting brunches still. Like they had brunches with music playing. They have outdoor seating. And they also had on, I think it was Friday or Saturday nights, they had like Latin dance night. And so then the people that had moved in to the residences around Seaport started calling the cops because they said that they were attracting the wrong crowd and unwanted people into their community. So,
right.
So,
okay.
And the cops basically shut down those particular activities that the establishment was doing. So,
which cops aren't supposed to do. They're not supposed to just make you do things. They're supposed to go through the proper chain of command to make sure that it happens. They're not allowed to just tell you that you can't do certain things, because there's cases in New York they're just like that. They definitely were on the take. I don't know if you heard about it, but like, well, I'll get into it a little later. But yeah.
So I was blanking on the name of the establishment, but for those of you that are ever in Boston. Oh, and the reason that I'm saying this is because the restaurant is now financially struggling because they no longer have revenue sources from the dance night and the brunches that they had before, because they were forced to shut it down. And so when they're trying to bring in a diverse crowd to be a part of like this growing community in the Seaport, Black and brown people are getting shut out of it because white people are complaining about it. So kind of to the point about like, oh my God, I'm the victim because I'm welcome, like the wrong crowd. Brown people are in my backyard. I no longer feel safe.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
It goes back to the point that you were making, Maddie.
Their music's so spicy. I can't take it.
So for those of you that are going out there, it's called La Casa de Pedro.
Hey.
So
Pedro's
support
house.
the business, because it's ridiculous that even when you are someone that's trying to hustle for yourself, make your own business, build your own business, you're still having white people fuck your money. Like,
for nothing.
For nothing.
Or mess with you because you're at Yale trying to get this work, trying to be a doctor, and all of a sudden you got this wild Yakubian woman who thinks that you don't go to this school, has been proven to do the same shit with another black student, decided that it was a great idea to call the cops on her while she was studying. And sometimes, I'm just saying, as a college student, I've done this before. I'm pretty sure Lena's D's done this before. I'm pretty sure Maddie's done this before. We got a big test to study for, and we used these last couple of days to study for it. But then sometimes we've been up all day doing activities and stuff that when we get to the activity that we need to do, which is study, your eyes start to wander and fall asleep or whatever. And something, it happens. It happens. You sleep. I've slept in the common room. I've slept in the library before. Maybe for like 15, 20 minutes. I wake up. Oh shit.
It's
like,
a power nap.
It's just,
I used to do that
get
shit all
right
the time.
back into it.
Yeah, I do that in my room.
But then like.
That's because I didn't trust people.
You call the cops. You literally could have done everything but call the cops. You could be like, oh, so do you go to school here? And you'd have been like, yeah. And then life would have been good. And then you just
no, you know why I call bullshit on that?
Shit.
I call bullshit on that because it wasn't the first day.
No. It wasn't.
They lived down the hall from one another.
Exactly.
It showed her door to the woman that called the cops on her door.
Mm-hmm.
It was not the first time she has ever seen this woman on campus.
And that's
so
why
I call bullshit on that.
Yeah, I know.
There's
that's
no
why
way that you've never seen me before and don't know that I'm a student.
That's
You've
why
seen me around. You just felt away. So fuck that.
Yeah,
There's no
and
need for a
that's why I'm
conversation.
wild
She
pissed
felt
off.
entitled.
That's
That's what it is.
and
And
that's
that's
why
what the issue that we have right now is.
Right.
There you have these women that feel that their whiteness is threatened because a minority is around them living their fucking lives.
And that's why I'm like, wow. I was like, wow, pissed off because that right there, that makes no sense. Like, you're part of the Yale community. Like, why are you doing this?
It's
you literally
bullshit,
could have done everything
it also
but that.
Leads to the final thing that we want to make sure that people stay aware of and stay woke about, which is how the police are being militarized and how they're essentially being used against these minority communities. This is nothing new. We're not saying anything that y'all haven't heard before.
We said it
this
before.
is essentially how Stay Woke came to be. It became more popular recently because of the Black Lives Matter movement. And that came to be because of the shootings of all of these unarmed African-American men and women.
Or the illegal chokeholds that y'all
Like-
put on a guy who's selling loose cigarettes on the streets. Come on, man. Loose cigarettes? Man,
Either
did
way,
he die?
like, that's what this is about. And it's like, there's just too many to name at this point. And I'm sure by the time that we air this episode, there's going to be more.
There's probably going to be more.
There's one, like, it feels like every day.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And the thing is, now because the focus is on immigration and there's so much focus on the fuckery that the president is doing, we're losing sight
Of the things
of
that
how
are,
this is
yeah.
still happening, because it's still happening.
Because it
back in 2016 and 2017, it was in the news every single fucking day.
Because
now you don't hear about it.
It comes from the top down. Basically, like, unfortunately, in the United States of America, the president sets the tone. And unfortunately, the tone has been America first. But that's code word for white people first and
It's a
everybody
charade.
else second. Like, and I'm tired of this whole narrative that we have out there that this is the case. But let me get back. Let's get into the police militarization part. Like, I was in Boston when the Boston bombings happened. That shit was scary. But what was even more scary than that was they shut down the whole city of Boston. And for all the Boston people who are listening, they know exactly what I'm talking about, because there were nobody in the streets. I remember this day because I had to take Lena D to South Station, and she had to take the bus to New York City.
The bus was canceled.
And then I had to go pick up Lena D and come back. Meanwhile, I'm like, what the fuck? Why am I the only person on this road right now driving on the Tolman Bridge? And everybody knows, who's in Boston knows exactly what I'm talking about. So I drove from Tolman Bridge back because at that point I'm living in Chelsea, and I drove from South Station back over the Tolman Bridge, pay that fucking toll, come back.
Well, you dropped me off at the airport. So I got a notification that the bus was canceled. So we were almost headed to South Station. I was like, no, drop me off at the airport. I was lucky enough to get a car. And as I'm getting the car, the news is like on the TVs about that they just caught the guy. Like, they've literally shut down the city.
That happened at night. They caught the guy at night.
Yeah, but like, they didn't unveil everything until the day after.
Oh, okay.
So that's why the city's shut down, because like they were trying to
they're trying to catch
him.
the guy.
But remember, he was hiding.
Yeah, no. So basically, the whole city shut down. When I say the whole city shut down, I mean there was nobody on the road. Like, no one
scary.
out and about. This shit looked like something out of The Walking Dead. That's how crazy it looked. I'm driving around a little bit here and there. I'm like, there's nobody out here. Why is that? I'm like, how does the police have that much power to tell everybody to stay indoors because as the bombing happened and all of a sudden everybody just stays indoors? They canceled I was supposed to go to work that day, canceled that.
I think it's
we
more
can't go
than
home.
just that, though, because a response to a terror attack is one thing, but the issue that we have is the response. The
response is crazy.
No,
Well,
it's the
that's
response
one part
to
of it. The second
to
part
how
is
the police respond to nonviolent protests. Like, and that's the issue that we really.
But
have.
I think that's one and the same. The only reason why
it's not.
No. Let me explain. The reason why I think that's one and the same is because when you tell people not to come out, that is essentially a form of martial law. Just like you're shooting like a police person with armed out to the teeth with military grade weapons, shooting at a crowd of nonviolent people. That's actually that is actually something that happens in martial law, where everybody has to do whatever the law official tells them to do. And that's why I have a problem with it. And that's why I'm saying it's all the same, because it's just like, it's not just one person that they're shooting at. They're shooting at a whole crowd of people.
And I guess, again, we're going to agree to disagree. And it's because a response to a terror attack, that sort of response, although it may seem ridiculous, because there are so many lives that are impacted by that one attack. Like, look at how many people were impacted, whether they died or were injured. So it's just like, shit, we need to control this and figure out what's going on.
Well, we need to have more faith in our public officials. All right.
So that's one thing. But when you hear that there's a group of people that are marching peacefully against the killing of an unarmed individual, and you show up in not just riot gear, but military grade weapons, that's not fitting. That does not.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't work.
But none of it fits.
So, oh shit, somebody just took out 300 people. Let's figure out what's happening, and this is how we respond. Versus, there's 100 black people marching in the street non-violently, not bothering nobody. Let's run up and start throwing tear gas at them, and let's start like shooting at them, whether it's rubber bullets or not. That does not.
No, it doesn't.
Fit.
Yeah, none of it.
So that's why I have an issue, and that's why I can't agree with you.
It's the extreme of it, though. So I understand the extreme of you're basically going to a nonviolent protest and you're attacking people you should be protecting, because part of it is it's a nonviolent protest because obviously it's taking place because of a divisive issue. So there are going to be two trains of thought of it. The police should be there to protect the people that have a permit to non-violently protest most of the time.
Most definitely.
And that's the thing. You're
allowed to do it. Yeah.
The permission to be here. You didn't just randomly send out a tweet and be like, hey, yo, everybody meet me at 10 o'clock in Times Square.
Yeah.
Like, no, you went through all of the proper legal channels in order to assemble. And to be met with that kind of force.
Right.
That's an issue.
No, that's an issue. That's
local police officers to be given the leftovers of the military. That is ridiculous.
And the thing,
and them to be so quick to use it.
Oh yeah, it's like you don't have. There's no justification.
No,
like there's always just like, and this goes back to the militarization piece of it, is the fact that you are then putting these military grade arms in the arms of people that are supposed to be protecting the people that they're attacking, but then it's a power thing. So all of a sudden, like, you're giving people in power more power, and then you don't hold them accountable to it.
Nope.
So the it's not just an issue of like, oh, there's all this overinvestment into giving military grade weapons to the police force, but then you're not holding those people accountable for not doing their job and protecting the people, instead killing the people they're supposed to be protecting.
Right. But that goes back to the very first thing I said when we started this episode. I was just like, please vote in your local primaries because they represent the views. Vote for someone that represent your views, what you want to see in government, because, there are the programs that exist today. Unfortunately, while we praise Bill Clinton as a good president, these are Bill Clinton's programs. Like, when surplus military grade weapons, they can't be sold. What they end up doing, because what ends up happening in local municipalities is that when they have a surplus of extra money, they want to keep receiving the budget, because if they don't spend that money, then they lower the budget on them. So you know what they do? They take some of that money and they use it to buy the surplus of weapons that the United States Armed Forces does not use. So they give that to them. So all of a sudden you see local municipalities with tanks, you know, M5s, military grade Kevlar. Like, you would have swore that they were going into war with the fucking civilians. That's how crazy it is. And that's what local police districts have to do to keep up with the budget. Because if they don't use that money on certain things that policemen and women need, then they lose that budget. So they don't want to have to fight an uphill battle for when they need more money. So that money easily can be spent on what helps police officers. But unfortunately, there's
essentially nobody that's challenging.
There's no one saying, okay, instead of saying let's get gear, let's get additional training for diffusionary tactics. Like, how do I diffuse a situation that has gone very critical without having to use my weapon?
I mean, weapon's the first thing that they use.
Of course.
How do I stop all of these punk ass
things
motherfuckers from always feeling like their life is threatened by minorities, but not by white people?
Oh, yeah, it's rare when you hear
It's rare when you hear that.
My favorite story
The only time that we've heard it, the only time we've heard it, in the one time, is a brown person shooting a white woman by mistake in Minnesota, and now he's being charged for murder.
That's not the only time, though.
That's not the only time, that's the only time that we were hearing about it.
No. So the beauty of it is, if there is a black officer that's involved, they're more likely to be tried and found guilty.
Almost that
versus if it's all white officers that are part of the cover up or part of the shooting or the excessive force, whatever the case might be.
Like Freddie Gray.
If there is a minority officer in the mix, you're more likely to get some kind of there's no accountability. So it's not just to be aware of how our police departments are being militarized, but it's also acknowledging and demanding that some kind of action happen. Like, you can't just keep shooting people and then being placed on administrative leave.
Still getting paid.
Paid leave.
You're still
on
getting
paid leave.
For
and
killing someone.
Nothing happens.
And then
it's very rare that there's really any kind of real repercussions.
There isn't any.
Again, just because it's not at the forefront of every news article every day like it had been back in 2016 and 2017 doesn't mean it's not still happening. And we still have to, we have to use that social media platform that we have to remain aware, because a lot of these things aren't picked up by your big news networks.
Right.
You have to really dig in and like find other outlets too that really are covering and representing like these untold stories, because it's not like it's gone away. It's like, oh, I haven't heard of like any police shootings.
There hasn't been a hashtag for anybody recently. I guess the cops started to stop shooting people, right? No,
it's
not what
happening. And the thing is like the reform piece is really what I'm stuck on, because we've seen lack of reform in other police-driven activities, like in the race riots or with lynchings, where there was no accountability. People were just allowed to do whatever they wanted to do. They were killing people. They weren't being prosecuted for killing someone. It was just socially acceptable. So by us, the people that live in these communities where the police are empowered to do what they're doing and they're not being checked, we're basically creating this environment where the police can just do what they want, and they have the power and they have the weapons to unjustly just kill people and continue to kill them if there isn't going to be reform around how they're using weapons or even holding them accountable. Like you said, like they're being put on administrative leave and still getting paid. Like, that doesn't tell me that I've done anything wrong. That doesn't mess with my livelihood. So like, why would behavior change?
All right, guys. This has been a super long episode, but hopefully it was informative. We thank you for listening.
And stay woke.
Stay woke. And like always,
Don't forget to vote.
Don't forget to vote.
Don't forget to register.
Don't forget to register. Have people represent you and what you feel, what your beliefs are. And yeah, peace out, Girl Scouts.